Good morning. My name is Donna Williams, and I am the chair of the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. It is 10:35 a.m., April 24th, 2024. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. Please be aware that this meeting is being broadcast live via the internet. Members, when I call your name, please announce present. Donna Williams, present. Emma Swartz, Vice Chair.
Present.
Richard Clemmer. Fred Frias.
Present.
Ashley Thomas.
Present.
Daniel Wong.
Present.
Please record in the minutes that we have a quorum. Agenda item 2 is consideration and possible action to adopt the minutes for January 24th, 2024 committee meeting. Do I have a motion to adopt the January 24 minutes of the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success? May I have a motion? Ashley?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion made by Ashley, second made by Dr. Frias. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 3 is public testimony on agenda items relating to the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. We do not have anyone registered to testify, so we will go on to the next item. Agenda item 4 is consideration and possible action to adopt the consent calendar. The consent calendar includes non-controversial items that we think can be approved without comment or discussion. This allows us to save time for other items that need more of our attention. Highlighted items in gray are the consent items on the agenda. We're going to take up the consent calendar in 2 parts: approval of non-rule consent items and then the rule consent items. Of course, any board member can request that an agenda item be added or removed from the consent calendar. The non-rule agenda items listed on the consent for this meeting are agenda item 5A, consideration and possible action to adopt the report to the board on school closeouts and/or teach-outs pursuant to Board Rule 7.76. Agenda item 5C, consideration and possible action to adopt the report on fiscal year 2024 annual review of low-producing programs. Agenda item 5D1 is consideration and possible action to appoint members to the Advisory Council on Post-Secondary Education for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Agenda item 5D2, consideration and possible action to appoint members to the Applied Texas Advisory Committee. Agenda item 5E1, consideration and possible action to appoint student representatives to the Apply Texas Advisory Committee. Agenda item 5E2, consideration and possible action to appoint student representatives to the Learning Technology Advisory Committee. At this time, I'd like to add agenda item 5E3 to the non-consent rule calendar. Agenda item 5C3 is consideration and possible action to appoint student representatives to the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee. Members, are there any other agenda items that anyone would like to add to the consent calendar? Are there any items that anyone would like to remove from the consent calendar? Hearing none, do I have a motion for approval of the non-rule consent calendar as amended? May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion made by Dr. Frias. May I have a second? Second by Ms. Emily Swartz. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Members, the next item on the consent are the rule items. The rules placed on Consent calendar are those that are either technical, conforming, or implement non-controversial policies around which there is a consensus. Agenda item 5H1, consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments to board rules, chapter 1, subchapter G, section 1.128B, concerning the authority and specific purpose for the Apply Texas Advisory Committee. Agenda item 5H2 is consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments to board rules, chapter 4, subchapter A, section 4.10H2 through 4, concerning the common admissions application form. Agenda item 5H5, consideration and possible action to repeal and adopt new board rules, chapter 4, subchapter D, sections 4.81 through 4.87, concerning dual credit partnerships between secondary schools and Texas public colleges. Agenda item 5H11, consideration and possible action to adopt amendments to board rules, chapter 13, subchapter N, section 13.406B4, concerning the Texas Reskilling and Upskilling Through Education True Grant Program. At this time, I'd like to remove agenda item 5H5 from consent. Agenda item 5H5 is consideration and possible action to repeal and adopt new board rules, chapter 4, subchapter D, sections 4.81 through 4.87, concerning dual credit partnerships between secondary schools and Texas public colleges. Are there any other rule items that anyone would like to remove from the consent calendar? Do I have a motion for approval of the consent calendar as amended?
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Clemmer. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Thomas. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5A was approved on consent. Agenda item 5B is consideration and possible action to adopt the report to the legislature regarding reporting of sexual misconduct as institutions of higher ed per Texas Education Code, Chapter 51, subchapters E2 and E3. Mr. Arby Gonzalez, Assistant Commissioner for Internal Audit and Compliance, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Williams, and thank you. Committee members, my name is Arby Gonzalez, and I am the Assistant Commissioner for Internal Audit and Compliance. I am presenting the report on compliance with reporting certain incidences of sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating violence, or stalking at public and private independent institutions of higher education, and I'm seeking to adopt this report to the legislature per Texas Education Code. Senate Bill 212 and House Bill 1735 passed by the 86th Texas Legislature requires us to review compliance related to the Education Code Chapter 51. The legislature also granted our agency authority to assess possible penalties. We developed those rules through negotiated rulemaking last spring. This is our first project with those possible penalties in place. In summary, all institutions we reviewed substantially complied with requirements in the Texas Education Code subchapters E2 and E3. Specifically, we reviewed all higher ed institutions under subchapter E2, which is related to institutions certifying its compliance on an annual basis. There were 11 institutions that submitted its certifications after the due date, and we worked with those institutions to cure its noncompliance within a reasonable time. We also selected 3 institutions to review compliance under subchapter E3 using a risk-based method. Subchapter E3 is related to specific reporting requirements that's detailed in our rules. We reviewed Brazosport College, Victoria College, and Houston Christian University. Some of these institutions had areas that it can improve its compliance. For example, Houston Christian University, the institution substantially complied with the overall requirements of sexual misconduct reporting, but there were two requirements where they could improve its compliance. First, the institution could not provide documentation to support that their board of trustees approved a sexual misconduct reporting policy. And second, that their board reviewed the policies at least biannually. They asserted that they had conducted these activities with their board, but they could not provide the documentation to support that they did. The institution agreed with these observations and committed to remedying them in a timely manner. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adopt the report to the legislature regarding reporting of sexual misconduct at institutions of higher education per Texas Education Code 51, subchapters E2 and E3?
So moved.
Have a motion by Ms. Schwartz. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Clemmer. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Agenda item 5C through 5E3 were approved on consent. Agenda item 5F is consideration and possible action to approve receipt of fiscal year 2025 Carl D. Perkins Community and Technical Colleges Consolidated Grant Funds not to exceed $43 million and the receipt of fiscal year 2025 Carl D. Perkins State Leadership Grant Funds not to exceed $5 million. Dr. Tina Jackson, Assistant Commissioner for Workforce Education, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Good morning.
Good morning. Tina Jackson, Assistant Commissioner, Workforce Education, Chair and committee members. So glad to be here with you today. The U.S. Department of Education allocates Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education funds to the states annually under the Strengthening Careers in Technical Education for the 21st Century Act of 2019, or Perkins 5. For the fiscal year of 2024-2025, the department estimates that appropriated funds of $127 million will be allocated to the state of Texas. The Texas Education Agency is the state's designee eligible to receive the state's annual allocations, Perkins 5. The State Board of Education allocates 30% of the funds to the coordinating board. The coordinating board staff requests the board's approval, receipt of the 2024-2025 Perkins 5 up to but not exceeding $43 million and leadership grant funds in the amount up to but not exceeding $5 million. 85% of the allocation funds will be distributed to public two-year colleges and required under Perkins 5. 10% will support state leadership activities and a small fund for activities supporting students entering non-traditional fields. 5% of the funds are set aside for coordinating board administration of Perkins funds. This concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Any questions? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve receipt of fiscal years 2025 Carl D. Perkins Community and Technical Colleges Consolidated Grant Funds not to exceed $43 million and receipt of fiscal year 2025 Carl D. Perkins State Leadership Grant Funds not to exceed $5 million? May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Wong. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Thomas. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5G1 through 5 are the request for new degree programs. Members' representatives from each institution will be available to answer questions at tomorrow's quarterly board meeting, removing the requirement for them to attend both the committee and board meetings will reduce travel time and costs to the institutions. Agenda item 5G1 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from Tarleton State University for a Doctor of Occupational Therapy, OTD, in Occupational Therapy. Elizabeth Mayer, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Good morning.
Good morning, Elizabeth Mayer, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs. Tarleton State University is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Occupational Therapy or OTD degree program in occupational therapy that would require 86 semester credit hours for students entering with either a bachelor's or a master's degree. The proposed face-to-face program on the Stephenville campus would provide professional training to develop entry-level occupational therapists with an understanding of the occupational needs of clients, groups, and populations in various contexts and communities. The Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts the national demand from 2022 to 2032 to grow 12% for occupational therapists, much faster than the average for all occupations. Similarly, the Texas Workforce Commission anticipates the state demand from 2020 to 2030 for occupational therapists to grow 24%. The proposed program would begin in the summer of 2025 with 6 core faculty dedicating 6 full-time equivalents. In accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, the institution plans to hire 3 additional core faculty within the first year of the proposed program, for a total of 9 headcount in terms of faculty. And that concludes my remarks for this item. Happy to answer any questions.
Have any questions for Ms. Mayer? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the request from Tarleton State University for a Doctor of Occupational Therapy, OTD, in occupational therapy? May I have a motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Ms. Swartz. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Frias. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5G2 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from Texas State University for a Doctor of Philosophy, a PhD in Civil Engineering. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Texas State University is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Philosophy degree program in civil engineering that would begin in the fall of 2024. The proposed program would be offered face-to-face on the San Marcos campus. The program would require 54 semester credit hours for students entering with a master's degree and 78 semester credit hours for students entering with a bachelor's degree. The proposed program would incorporate components aimed at training students for research-oriented professions in both industry and in academia, encompassing traditional civil engineering pathways. I also did want to let you all know the tuition amount listed on the blue page is not correct. It's actually $9,776, not $39,000. So just wanted to clarify that. That's the resident amount, and the non-resident amount is actually $17,966. So I just wanted to make sure I let you guys know that was just an error. In addition, the Bureau of Labor Statistics predicts the national demand from 2022 to 2032 to grow 5% for civil engineers, faster than the average for all occupations. Similarly, the Texas Workforce Commission anticipates the state demand from 2020 to 2030 for civil engineers to grow 22%. Texas State would begin the proposed program in the fall of 24 with 6 core faculty dedicating 3 full-time equivalents. In accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, Texas State plans to hire 2 additional core faculty within the first 5 years of the proposed program for a total of 8 full-time equivalents. And that concludes my remarks for this item.
Members, any questions for Ms. Mayer?
I have a question.
Mhm.
So they're starting in the fall. Some of these programs, the turnaround is so short.
Yeah.
In terms of curriculum and faculty, and you're talking about the fall, September. We're already, late April, going to be May soon. I mean, are we getting some feedback in what's happening in terms of how those programs are operating, or are there delays? Do you ever get any reports on we're delayed?
In terms of what we're doing, or in terms of what the institution, in terms of their timeline?
In terms of the timelines, do we have much changes or feedback
I have not heard anything. I mean, for the doctoral proposals based upon statute, we have a year to review. And now we have that planning a notification that we get ahead of time, which is really helping our team to be able to plan. So you submit your planning notification, then you have to wait a year for a doctoral professional program. So we kind of have an idea of what's coming, what's going to be in the queue. And we're trying to make sure that we're supporting our institutions because I think in addition to us, they have to go to their accreditor, which all of our current institutions are with SAC-COC. So they get our review and approval, and then that is bundled with the information that they have to send on to SAC.
Yeah, where I'm going with this is that we just had the formula funding report.
Mhm.
And then I hear of programs sometimes saying, oops, we came to the coordinating board, we had this program, things didn't quite work out. We need to go to the legislature. We need more money. We need to restructure things. So sometimes it could be that the timeline seems to be a little bit short, but you're right about the professional programs, the doctorate programs and all. But I'm just wondering, if I'm putting myself in an administrator's position, sometimes trying to fast track things is not always the best way. Just a FYI, if we're getting any
Yes.
information back.
Yes. Yes. And sometimes we have proposals that we talk to the institution about, and they will rework it and then resubmit it.
Thank you.
Because as part of our process, we also have that site review team that comes in and does the pretty in-depth analysis. So it's not only our team's review, we have discipline-specific faculty from all over the country who are reviewing these and ensuring it's going to be a high-quality program. Yes. So as part of the application, they provide all of their resources, and that is the proposal in full, including the resources section, is what those reviewers also look at to ensure that do you have the appropriate number of faculty? Are you going to have the appropriate research endeavors as you're moving through the program and giving that kind of experience for the students. So that is all included in the proposal and what the site reviewers, because we have a desk review that is done and then a site review team that comes in. Typically 3 reviewers review each of the doctoral and professional programs. Yes, sir.
Additional comments or questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the request from Texas State University for a Doctor of Philosophy, a PhD in Civil Engineering? May I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Thomas. And I think I heard a second. Mr. Clemmer, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5G3 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from Texas State University for a Doctor of Philosophy, a PhD in Integrated Molecular and Biophysical Chemistry. Ms. Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Texas State University is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Philosophy degree program in Integrated Molecular and Biophysical Chemistry that would begin in the fall of 2024. The proposed program would be offered in person to students in San Marcos and would train PhD level biochemists, biophysicists, and chemists for the growing biomedical and life science industry in Texas and in the nation. This PhD program will be focused on the chemistry and biochemistry of natural systems. The proposed program would be unique in Texas for its emphasis on commercialization and industrial collaboration, and thus would be positioned to support and enhance the growing role of biomedical research and development in Texas and in the nation. The Bureau of Labor Statistics projects that nationally between 2021 and 2031, there will be an average of 4,000 new jobs for biochemists and biophysicists, a 15% increase, which is much higher than the average rate of growth for all occupations. Similar to national trends, the Texas Workforce Commission projects 20% growth in the number of biochemistry and biophysics positions in Texas from 2020 to 2030, which is well above the average growth in all positions, with 162 annual openings available. Both nationally and in Texas, there is high demand for biochemists and biophysicists, especially to support the growing needs of the life science industry. There are two existing biochemistry and molecular biology doctoral programs at Texas public institutions. One is at the University of North Texas, and one is at the University of Texas Medical Branch, Galveston. Together, these two programs graduate on average between 2018 and 2022, 12 PhD students a year combined, far less than the 162 annual openings projected by TWC data. In accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, Texas State will hire one new tenure track faculty member in year 2, an administrative assistant in year 1, and a senior lab services technician in year 3 for the program. That concludes my remarks for this item.
Sure. Mhm.
The hiring of a additional resource for year 1. Start of the program.
I would have to check with the institution to see what, and they will be here tomorrow, but I will double check and have them have an answer prepared for that.
You know, this seems like a really extremely powerful program,
Mhm.
so it certainly should be resourced appropriately if they're going to try to make this successful.
Yeah, I might come, well, we'll hear tomorrow,
Maybe.
but Mr.
Yes, sir.
Conrad, sometimes in these programs, what you have, different years that you take different courses and they're different professors of expertise. So, well, that's a good question. We'll ask tomorrow, but that's typically what I've seen is they'll have, you don't take organic chemistry in the first year, you wait to the second year. So you've got to start the program and then you have that professor ready to go in year 2 or year 3, whenever the program rolls out.
Mhm.
But we can find out. That's a good question for tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm. Additional questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the request from Texas State University for a Doctor of Philosophy, a PhD in Integrated Molecular and Biophysical Chemistry? May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call out who make it tomorrow, but I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5G4 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Texas at San Antonio for a Doctor of Philosophy, a PhD in Computer Engineering. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions. Ms. Mayer.
The University of Texas at San Antonio is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Philosophy degree in computer engineering that would begin in the fall of 2024. The proposed program would be offered face-to-face to students in San Antonio. If approved, the program would be the 6th PhD computer engineering program in Texas and the first in South Texas. UT San Antonio intends to provide full financial coverage to its computer engineering PhD students. In addition to having their tuition and fees and student health insurance paid by the institution, full-time doctoral students appointed as degree teaching assistants will receive an annual salary of $24,000 per year for fiscal year 2024. The Bureau of Labor Statistics does not have a category specific to computer engineering. However, BLS data for computer and information research scientists, a field that a PhD computer engineering graduate is likely to enter, predicts a 22.7 employment growth from 2022 to 2032. The Texas Workforce Commission projects an average of 2.4% increase in professional services employment each year between 2020 and 2030. This equates to an increase of 204,000 jobs or 26.8% growth over the 10-year period. The department plans to hire 2 new core faculty in the disciplines of hardware security and AI accelerator and 2 support faculty in the disciplines of bioinformatics and robotics. And that concludes my remarks for this item.
Any questions or comments?
I actually had a question. So their University of Texas in Austin does not have a PhD in computer engineering?
I would have to check. My team will check.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I'll have to. We'll look at the program.
If it doesn't, it certainly seems like that this region does need this. So I would be very supportive.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it would seem like it would be relatively close proximity.
Mhm. Yeah, typically in our notes, we have a map.
Oh, yeah,
of,
it might be in the map,
we
in the
have
back,
a
in your
map
agenda item.
of the closest programs.
Yeah. Check
I
here.
have an undergraduate.
It does not look like UT Austin has one.
Mhm.
Well, I think this is a very important area and one that certainly is going to have a lot of job growth in the state of Texas. So should be very supported. Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Not, do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas at San Antonio for a Doctor of Philosophy, a PhD in Computer Engineering?
Motion?
I have a motion by Mr. Clemmer. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Schwartz. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5G5 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Houston for a Doctor of Global Hospitality Leadership, a DGHL in Global Hospitality Leadership. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions.
So the University of Houston is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Global Hospitality Leadership degree in Global Hospitality Leadership. So in the blue page, it says they want to start in fall of 2024, but we received notice from them yesterday requesting that they would actually like to start in fall of 2025. So they want to have time to properly promote the program and assemble a strong initial cohort. So the proposed program would be offered completely online. This would be a professional program intended for executives already in the workforce, not a research-based PhD program intended for academics. Students are expected to have at least 5 years of high-level employment in the industry before the program, remain employed during the part-time program, and remain with their employer after the program. It would be the first such program in Texas and only the third in the world. The others are at Iowa State University and Hong Kong Polytechnic University. The Texas Workforce Commission projects lodging manager positions to grow 19.3% through 2030. The TWC projects an average of 85.4 openings per year, not including replacement positions. In accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, UH will hire 2 core faculty members with 100% of the time dedicated to the program. And that concludes my remarks for this item.
Questions or comments?
Do you happen to know what the difference is between this proposed program and their hospitality administration PhD at the same school?
I think this one is intended for working professionals as opposed to the PhD program, which is probably more academic and full-time.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Additional questions and comments? Not, do I have a motion to approve the request from University of Houston for a Doctor of Global Hospitality Leadership, a DGHL in Global Hospitality Leadership? May I have a motion? Motion by Dr. Frias. May I have a second? Second by Ms. Schwartz. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5H are the proposed rules. Agenda item 5H1 and 5H2 were approved on consent. Agenda item 5H3 is consideration and possible action to adopt amendments to Board Rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter B, Sections 4.22, 4.23, 4.27, 4.29, 4.32, 4.34, and 4.39 concerning transfer of credit, core curriculum, and field of study curricular. Members, you have supplemental materials for this item printed on the gold rod paper in your books. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Sorry. The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board proposes amendments to the Administrative Code Subchapter B concerning transfer of credit, core curriculum, and fields of study. These amendments will encourage the free and appropriate transferability of lower division course credit among institutions of higher education and provide for the smooth transfer of lower division coursework through core curricula, fields of study curricula, and a procedure for the resolution of transfer disputes. These rules align with the revisions that were part of HB 8. These rules were published in the Texas Register and had a 30-day public comment period. The coordinating board did receive comments from 2 public community college institutions during the 30-day public comment period. And the coordinating board, as always, is very appreciative of stakeholders reviewing these comments and are reviewing these rules and submitting comments. In the definition section, this rule now provides the addition of for academic associate's degrees and applied associate's degrees. This rule uses the Texas Education Code 61.003 to define categories for the institutions. There is also the addition of the resolution of transfer disputes for lower division courses. This section details the procedures in the resolution of credit transfer disputes involving lower division courses. This revision removes problematic language no longer supported by statutory authority. In addition, the core curricular larger than 42 semester credit hours revision allows for an institution contingent upon board approval to have a core curriculum of fewer than 42 semester credit hours for an associate's degree program if it would facilitate the award of a degree or a transfer of credit. And then lastly, this rule now allows for the direct of a Texas Direct Associate's degree with the directive to include a notation on the student's transcript who completes a field of study curriculum, the college's core curriculum, or an abbreviated core curriculum related to a specific approved field of study curriculum transferable to one or more general academic institutions. And I think based upon the discussion this morning, this is hopefully going to help minimize those loss of courses that are transferring and applicable. I'll be providing a transfer update tomorrow, but all of the work that we're doing on transfer is really trying to get to those challenges that were kind of highlighted today in terms of courses that are getting taken but not applicable. And that concludes my remarks. Commissioner, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Just to underline your point, Elizabeth, that so these rule changes are pretty important, both to align with some of the changes from last session, but also to help accelerate some of the work with the Transfer Advisory Council in specifying these fields of study. So really appreciate the work of the Transfer Advisory Committee in particular and in helping us put these proposed changes together.
Additional questions or comments? Not, do I have a motion to adopt amendments to Board Rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter B, Sections 4.22, 4.23, 4.27, 4.29, 4.32, 4.34, and 4.39 concerning transfer of credit, core curriculum, and field of study curricula. May I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Thomas. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Wong. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5H4 is consideration and possible action to repeal Board Rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter C, Sections 4.51 through 4.63, and adopt new Board Rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter C, Sections 4.51 through 4.62 concerning college readiness standards and the Texas Success Initiative, TSI. Dr. Jenny L. Strother, Assistant Commissioner for Students Success, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Williams and board members. Jenny L. Strother, Assistant Commissioner for Student Success. The coordinating board staff proposes the repeal and adoption of new rules concerning college readiness standards and the Texas Success Initiative, also known as TSI. As you all know, the TSI is a system established in statute for assessing whether students have met requirements to be deemed college ready, requiring advising and academic assistance supporting students, successful course completions, and momentum towards meeting academic and career goals. Repeal and adoption of new rules will modernize existing rules related to the TSI to reflect best practices in the delivery of developmental education. These rules clarify that college readiness standards do not apply to a high school student who is non-degree seeking, And an institution shall not require a non-degree seeking high school student to be assessed for college readiness. Finally, the proposed rules are better organized and more accessible for various stakeholders. During the 30-day public comment period, we did receive a comment which requested that the TSI exemption for the STAR Algebra 2 EOC be added. And this exemption was included previously, but inadvertently left off. And so we agreed and we added it back. It should be noted that both EOCs qualifying students for TSI exemptions have been discontinued by TEA since July 2021. However, since test scores are valid up to 5 years from test date, these exemptions remain in rule. This concludes my remarks, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions or comments? Not, do I have a motion to repeal Board Rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter C, Sections 4.51 through 4.63, and adopt new Board Rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter C, Sections 4.51 through 4.62 concerning college readiness standards in the Texas Success Initiatives, TSI. May I have a motion?
I'll move.
I have a motion by Ms. Schwartz. May I have a second?
Second.
I heard Dr. Frias, second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Before we go to the next agenda item, Ms. Mayor has a response for Mr. Richards, Mr. Clemens' question from previous.
So the UT San Antonio, you asked about UT Austin. They do have a program, but it is in electrical and computer engineering as opposed to UT San Antonio's proposed program. So that's why it's different. And it wasn't showing on the map because we use the classification of instructional programs or the CIP code. So I just want to provide that clarification that they have it together at Austin, and then San Antonio's program is just a little different. So I just wanted to provide that clarification for you.
Thank you.
I was at a meeting recently, and I believe that's the number one program, U.S. News and World Report, in the country for UT Austin in engineering.
Cool. Agenda item 5H5 is consideration and possible action to repeal and adopt new board rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter D, Section 4.81 through 4.87 concerning dual credit partnerships between secondary schools and Texas public colleges. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions.
I'm going to provide an overview of Chapter 4, Subchapter D, 4.81 through 4.87, the rules concerning dual credit partnerships between secondary schools and Texas public colleges. So these new rules will replace the existing rules in 4.81 through 4.86, which the coordinating board will repeal. Negotiated rulemaking was actually used in the development of these rules. In addition to the negotiated rulemaking, we also received public comments from 2 institutions of higher education and 1 nonprofit organization during the public comment period for the proposed new dual credit rules, including comments regarding the proposed rules for the College Connect courses. As always, as I stated before, we always appreciate the feedback of our stakeholders as we are proposing new rules. So prior to the 88th legislative session, Texas Education Code 61.059P defined how the state can fund dual credit courses. With the legislature's addition of the Financial Aid for Swift Transfer, or the FAST program, and Education Code 28.0095, the coordinating board is replacing its dual credit rules to ensure alignment of the coordinating board's rules and to clarify which dual credit courses the agency can fund in the base and performance tiers under Education Code Chapter 130A. The new rules clarify reporting and funding requirements for institutions and make the definitions uniform across the coordinating board's rules. The coordinating board will use the definitions for dual credit of its rules and will streamline the institution's compliance and reporting obligations. Dual credit courses or dual enrollment courses include courses in the core curriculum, courses as identified as part of the field of study curriculum, courses satisfying a foreign language requirement, and then lastly, career and technical education courses counting towards an industry-recognized credential, certificate, or associate's degree. Based upon the comments in the presentation you heard this morning, this again, another attempt to try to streamline those pathways for students. And as the discussion you all had this morning, I think that is particularly important for our dual credit students. Moving forward, so the degree seeking students is defined as a student seeking a degree as one who has filed or is required to file a degree plan pursuant to the Education Code 51.9685. This provision of statute requires dual credit students to file degree plans by the end of the regular semester, immediately following the semester in which they earn at least 15 semester credit hours, or by the end of this first semester if the student already enters with at least 15 semester credit hours. While it was commonly understood that a high school student with at least 15 semester credit hours was a degree-seeking student, there was no definition in statute or rule previously. In addition, the rule establishes parameters for the institutional agreements between school districts or private schools and institutions of higher education required for institutions to offer dual credit coursework. The rule lists required elements of these agreements, which includes the minimum content necessary to establish a successful dual credit framework in alignment with the statute. These elements provide for a transparent exchange of necessary data and information and establish important safeguards for students, including adequate and appropriate academic support. The rule stipulates course eligibility, student eligibility, requirements for the location and composition of the class, standards for faculty, and baseline academic policies. The coordinating board amends this rule to provide greater clarity around which students are eligible to enroll in dual credit courses based on whether the student is TSI exempt or has met college readiness standards. Pursuant to this rule, a student may enroll in dual credit if the student is non-degree seeking, exempt from the requirement of TSI, or has met the college readiness standards. Institutions may not offer remedial developmental education as dual credit, although this limitation does not prohibit institutions from enrolling students in not yet deemed college ready in dual credit, including the College Connect courses as established in rule. As you all have heard before, the College Connect courses sets parameters for a dual credit model institutions may optionally provide. These courses allow students not yet deemed college ready to experience college level coursework in a supportive environment in which institutions provide supplemental content to help prepare the students. Lastly, the rule connects the dual credit rules with coordinating board funding provisions. Under statute, all public institutions of higher education may receive appropriations for eligible dual credit courses. In addition, any participating public institution of higher education may receive dual credit funding for eligible courses through the FAST program. Thank you, and that concludes my remarks on this item.
Any questions or comments? All right, repeat back what she said. All right, do I have a motion to repeal and adopt new board rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter D, Sections 4.81 through 4.87 concerning dual credit partnerships between secondary schools and Texas public colleges? May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Wong. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Schwartz. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5H6 is consideration and possible action to adopt new board rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter V, Sections 4.35 through 4.353 concerning compliance and non-discrimination in intercollegiate athletic competition. Jarrell Booker, Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Academic Affairs and Innovation, will present this item and be available to answer questions. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members. I'm Jarrell Booker. I'm presenting on agenda item 5H6, seeking adoption of new board rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter V, Sections 4.350, 4.353, concerning compliance with non-discrimination in intercollegiate athletic competition. You may recall during the 88th legislative session, Senate Bill 15 required athletes to compete in intercollegiate sports based on their biological sex. These new rules before you mirror that legislation. We're addressing the institutional implementation of the legislation and requiring adherence to state and federal laws regarding student educational and student health records or medical records. We've received no comments during the comment period, and we respectfully request approval of these new rules, and I'm available for any questions you may have regarding these rules.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adopt new board rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter V, Sections 4.350 through 4.355 concerning compliance and with non-discrimination in intercollegiate athletic competition? May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Thomas. May I have a second? Second by Mr. Clemmer. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5H7 is consideration and possible action to adopt new board rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter X, Sections 4.370 through 4.376 concerning parenting and pregnant students. Dr. Jenny L. Strother will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Hello. Again, the coordinating board proposes new rules relating to the protection of pregnant and parenting students, resources for such students, and reporting requirements. As you recall, this past session, there were 3 bills passed, and this rule encompasses all 3 bills. HB 1361, the liaison officer for parenting students, SB 412, the pregnant and parenting student protections, and SB 459, student parent early registration. The Student Success Division sought feedback and input on these rules through the field via various surveys, discussion with our Student Success Advisory Work Group, and conversations with representatives from across the systems. We did receive several comments during the public comment period, and I want to emphasize our appreciation for those comments as they did strengthen the rule. In particular, due to the comments received related to Rule 4.375, it has been updated to consider flexibility needed based on the circumstances of the student's academic program, excused absences, leaves of absence, and return to the program as long as the program still exists and meets accreditation standards. Specifically, the rule is restructured to incorporate 4.375B, which addresses excused absences, and 4.375C, which delineates leave of absence to offer guidelines for institutions. These revisions are made in response to the comments by institutions to better address specific program requirements, including short courses and clinical rotations. We are seeking approval to adopt these new rules, which provide clarity and guidance to students, institutions of higher education, and the coordinating board staff for implementation of the program and data collection requirements. This concludes my remarks, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to amend and adopt new board rules, Chapter 4, Subchapter X, Sections 4.370 through 4.376 concerning parenting and pregnant students?
I'll move.
I have a motion by Ms. Schwartz. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Thomas. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5H8 is consideration and possible action to adopt amendments to Board Rules, Chapter 7, Subchapter A, Sections 7.8 concerning revising fees for Certificate of Authority applications and amendments. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions.
The Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board is authorized by the Texas Education Code, Section 61.306, to issue certificates of authority to approve private post-secondary institutions with operations in the state of Texas. to confer degrees or courses applicable to degrees, or to solicit students for enrollment in institutions that confer degrees or courses applicable to degrees while seeking a coordinating board recognized institutional accreditor. An institution may apply for and receive certificates of authority in 2-year increments for 8 years in total while it works through the CB's recognized accreditors. The coordinating board is also authorized to set and collect fees regarding the certificates of authority. The code sets forth that we can set an initial fee for certificate of authority in an amount not to exceed the average cost of reviewing the application, including the cost of the necessary consultants. They also can set a fee to cover the cost of program evaluation for an amendment to a certificate of authority. And then lastly, we can set a renewal fee in an amount not to exceed the average cost of reviewing the application, including the cost necessary for consultants. Since October of 2016, fees associated with the certificates of authority for institutions in the process of seeking the coordinating board recognized accreditation have been as follows. The certificate of authority application fee is $5,000 plus the travel expenses that are incurred. The certificate of authority renewal fee is $5,000 plus travel expenses incurred. And then lastly, the certificate of authority amendment fee is $500 plus travel expenses incurred. Considerable staff and consultant time is expended in reviewing these applications and amendments. In addition, consultants receive a stipend for their time in reviewing the application and participating in the site review. Coordinating board staff has been advised to include average travel expenses as part of the application, renewal, or amendment fees. In order to cover the increased travel expenses and account for a portion of the staff time needed to work with the applicants and site team members, the coordinating board staff at this time recommends the following fee increases for the certificate of authority process. To have the certificate of authority application be $8,000 and the certificate of authority renewal fee be $8,000. And then lastly, have that amendment fee be $800. So I just want to clarify, most of the requested increase is actually to incorporate and have a flat fee as opposed to having it separated out. So it's not actually going to be that significant of an increase. And that concludes my remarks for this item.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adopt amendments to Board Rules, Chapter 7, Subchapter A, Section 7.8 concerning revising fees for Certificate of Authority, applications, and amendments? May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Thomas. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Schwartz. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5H9 is consideration and possible action to adopt new board rules, Chapter 10, Subchapter RR, Sections 1.0.870 through 10.878 concerning Texas Innovative Adult Career Education ACE grant. Dr. Jenny L. Strother will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Thank you. The coordinating board proposes new rules concerning the Texas Innovative Adult Career Education, or I will refer to it as the ACE grant program today. The ACE grant program awards grants to eligible nonprofit workforce intermediary and job training organizations to prepare low-income students to enter careers in high-demand, high-wage occupations. Grant funds may be used to develop, support, or expand such programs. As you recall, this last session, House Bill 8 transfers administration of the ACE grant program from ACC to the coordinating board. Texas Education Code Chapter 136 requires the coordinating board to adopt rules for the administration of the program. Negotiated rulemaking was used in the development of proposed rules. We are seeking approval to adopt these rules, which outlines the program's requirements, which are necessary to administer the program. We did not receive any comments during the 30-day public comment period. This concludes my remarks, and I'm available for questions.
Any questions or comments? Do I have a motion to adopt new board rules, Chapter 10, Subchapter RR, Sections 10.870 through 10.878 concerning Texas Innovative Adult Career Education ACE Grant Program. May I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion by Dr. Wong. May I have a second?
Okay.
Second by Dr. Frias. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 5H10 is consideration and possible action to adopt new board rules, Chapter 12, Subchapter A, Sections 12.1 through 12.9 concerning Opportunity High School Diploma Program. Lee Richter, Assistant Commissioner for Workforce Education, will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Thank you, Chair Williams, members. I'm very happy to be here with you today to talk to you about the Opportunity High School Diploma and the rules for adoption. Again, my name is Lee Rector, Associate Commissioner for Workforce Education. So specifically, this agenda item lays out the proposed rules for the foundation of the diploma program and to provide clarity and guidance to both colleges implementing the program as well as coordinating board staff in administering the program. The proposed rules lay out a framework for the diploma program as a competency-based education program for an adult student who is 18 years or older and is co-enrolled in a workforce education program at a college, and also, of course, who has no high school diploma as a given. The rules establish the 5 core competencies of the program, being quantitative reasoning, scientific reasoning, civics, communication, and workplace success skills. And the rules will also lay out the fact that the commissioner will approve assessments for the 5 core competency areas that colleges must use in determining that a student has achieved the competencies specified. The rules include that the colleges may offer this program in many ways, whether it's on a single college or in a consortium model. And finally, in administering the program, the commissioner must consult with the Texas Education Agency, the Texas Workforce Commission, and its chairman's tri-agency Workforce Council. And then finally, the rules require reporting from the colleges to the coordinating board and specified in the manner in which that will happen. No comments were received during the public comment period. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And I know that I think the commissioner would like to provide comment.
Members, this is an initiative from House Bill 8 that we're particularly excited about. We have more than 2 million Texans who are working age Texans who don't have high school diplomas, and they're really not well served by typical GED programs. When we look into the earnings data, we can see that GEDs just don't command the kind of wage premium that a high school diploma does. And so this is a unique opportunity to create a high school diploma in close consultation with the Workforce Commission and with employers. I appreciate my friend and colleague, Brian Daniels, assembled an advisory group of employers and associations that are working with us on this, where they're polling their membership and polling different employers. So the idea is not just to design this new high school diploma from a higher education standpoint, but really in close consultation with the employers about what would they expect a high school graduate to know and be able to do. Also, Jobs for the Future is helping us scan nationally, thanks to some support through the foundation from philanthropy, so that we can get a sense of what the appropriate assessments are. We'll come back to the board with more information as we zero this in for which assessments we're going to be using. We are working very closely already with 5 colleges that stepped up to be design partners with us. And so this is an exciting new initiative. The colleges also have indicated that they would like to get the programs up and running as early in the fall as possible. So our intent is to have the standards, the assessments all dialed in, the programs approved, and be able to launch the programs before the legislature reconvenes in January.
I have a question. I'm sorry, but this is exciting actually. Is there any minimal educational requirement for this? Elementary school, junior high, I don't know, any minimal educational requirement, or somebody have no educational background still eligible for this program, right?
So that's a really interesting question, and we've actually had that question from colleges. So because this is a competency-based education program, I think there are a couple of things to consider. Not only assessments at the end, but pre-assessments or documentation as to what has already been achieved through prior learning by a student. The rule and statute is silent on the question that you just asked. Having said that, many colleges also offer adult basic education programs. And so I think in looking at an individual student, they would make the determination as to the path, whether it was to adult basic education, adult secondary education, because remember, there needs to be a co-enrollment in a workforce education program with this diploma. And so many of those who might go to adult basic education probably may not be in enough of an advanced position to complete this diploma.
Okay. Second question, is there any credit to somebody kind of like foreign student? I deal with a lot of those foreign students. They have a degree in foreign country, but are they going to give some credit in terms of their high school diploma there or some even college education in order to get into this program and get the high school diploma?
So that's a really interesting question, Mr. Wong, because some of the colleges have experience dealing with that. I know this is something that the chairman and I talked to folks at South Texas College about. So the idea with this would be just to emphasize Lee's last point is there would be some assessment of where the students are. So they have basically what credits do they have? What do they have military service? Do they have, and they might ask the students to take assessments and figure out where they are. What I've heard from the colleges, like there are some of these international students that on their, particularly on say math and science, they might be much farther along, but on they might need more intensive support, especially in academic English. And so they might need to focus more of their efforts there. So they could say, okay, well, we'll check the box for you on quantitative reasoning or on scientific reasoning based on those initial assessments. And then just the student areas that the student might need to focus on would be civics, more U.S. government, and English and communication skills.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to see how it develops. But looking forward to this development of the program. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do we know how widely adopted this is going to be?
We know how widely adopted we aspire for it to be. The need out there, Ms. Schwartz, is really stunning. So when we looked into the kind of data we've compiled, like for our T3 analyses. So for example, like just in the DFW region, about 15% of their workforce would fit in this category of not having high school diplomas. There seems to be a lot of enthusiasm with the colleges. Nobody turned us down. So Dallas College, Alamo College, San Jac, El Paso Community College, Austin Community College have been, they have stepped up and also all have strong adult basic education programs that we can build on. But we already have other colleges that are asking to join into the work and be able to participate more as consortia. So the way this was written into statute, it's 5 colleges or consortia of colleges. So we would love to have all of the colleges across the state be able to offer this program In some cases, some of those courses, some of those materials might need to be delivered in partnership, like leveraging our new course sharing network across colleges. But we want to move aggressively so that across Texas we can make this opportunity available.
And there is a provision in the rules that colleges must apply to the coordinating board and then be approved by the commissioner to offer the program. At some point this summer, when we get to that point, because we are in the design phase of instructional outcomes in those 5 areas, I think we will have a better indication of the colleges that are truly kind of interested in this.
You may have said this in your remarks, but once the program is up and running, how long will it take for them to get the diploma?
That is currently under consideration by our design partners, and there is a lot of discussion around that. We have started a process with subject matter experts where they're looking at the 5 core competency areas and designing instructional outcomes and standards to those to cover that competency area. And I think depending on what those look like may determine in part how much time they think that would take. So, will math be longer than civics at this point in time? That's under consideration. But the other piece is that because competency based, if a student comes in with a high school diploma and they have passed a business math course, it's conceivable that they can place out of portions of the whole math course. So each student in many ways may have almost an individualized learning plan because it's not an all or nothing.
We have a number of students, they've dropped out from high school and they just lacked a couple of courses. They were really close. Of course, we have that happen with our college students as well. And so depending on, just to emphasize Lee's point, since it's competency based, the idea is really to meet students where they're at and get a sense of what do they need to focus on to get that last mile to get to completion. So it's conceivable that we could roll out the program in the fall and already have awarded diplomas in the fall by the time we get to the legislative session.
So I have a comment. Were there any other questions, that came up, Ms. Rector, in terms of things that, might come up, but the reason I bring that up is because the commissioner said GED, workforce, jobs, money. What is the GED worth versus this program? I mean, do we have any ideas or have we looked into that? And I really like it. It's great. I think it's going to be very valuable, but I'm just wondering the comparisons. Have we done any studies on that?
It's still we're still in the design phases, but that's one of the reasons, Mr. Chairman, we wanted to emphasize from the beginning that close partnership with TWC and with employers across the state. Not that our colleges couldn't design a competency-based high school diploma, but we wanted to make sure that what we designed was designed to be a credential of value immediately. And so in particular, one of the things that together we have emphasized and will be included are what we call employability skills or soft skills as one of the elements. So it's basically the 4 core subject areas plus employability skills together constitute the set of requirements that students would have to make. And that's not stipulated from just by the educators. That's from the employers about what they would count as evidence.
Yeah, I think that's great because the employer is getting that message out to see what the value is in terms of the definition of, is key. Otherwise, it's just, another piece of paper.
And Mr. Chairman, I mean, from my previous life before coming here just under a year ago, I worked with workforce boards and employers in the workforce system, and what we consistently heard and what my council members heard was that employers view a GED or an alternative high school diploma as less than, And one of the things that is specified in statute for this diploma is that it has the equivalent, or it is equivalent to a diploma in Texas Education Code that is awarded by a school. So I think that elevates it. And then the challenge really is to make sure, as the commissioner and I have spoken many times, to make sure that the diploma is valued by employers in the regions that these students are trying to get into the workforce, because the diploma is going to give them at least a credential to be able to apply for a job. And hopefully that workforce education credential will give them the technical skills for a job, and the combination of those two. What does that look like?
No, I think I like it. I
Mhm.
think that's good.
One more quick question. What are the key difference between the current GED program in some of the community college and this particular program? Is it because they are involved already into some technical training? That's why they will be examined from some of the regular GED courses, because you can place them. So they don't have to go through that, because I'm doing that now. So I can exempt from that, so I can get my diploma much quicker that way.
So one way to think about it is that the GED programs are essentially test prep programs for that GED test, and as Lee mentioned, that it just doesn't have the same kind of market value to have successfully completed the GED, versus in this program you have to be enrolled in a workforce program, and this is a real high school diploma and it's stipulated in statute. This is a Texas high school diploma. This is not an equivalent. This is not less than. This is a high school diploma. And this is a high school diploma program that's been designed in close consultation with Texas employers. And so the idea is that we have something that's it's innovative, it's flexible, but again, this is not an equivalency or just a test. This is a real Texas high school diploma. Not that we're aware.
Seems like there has to be good marketing to employers about what the meaning of it is. So
Definitely. Yeah, so that we can increase awareness and participation also.
Because I can debate all day long about the real high school diploma is the one that allows somebody to get to college easily. That means he or she is probably very efficient in a lot of high ed first year courses. Like, for example, some of the high school students, they get to all the college because they already have calculus. And I don't think that, you're talking about the real high school diploma. It depends on how you define. The employer looking at the high school diploma, like me, he has a high school education, knowing that that person may be able to do a area of a circle or whatever that may be, something very basic. But the real high school diploma is allowing them to really apply to some of the colleges, go out of state, go to Harvard or whatever that may be. Those so it depends on how you define the real high school diploma. That's what I'm saying.
This is a really important point. So this is why we thought it was important to stipulate in the statute that this is a high school diploma that would be treated as a high school diploma. So on our requirements about, for example, eligibility for financial aid programs, that it's clear that that the graduates of these programs are Texas high school graduates. And so that is a really important point. This is not an equivalency. This is a high school diploma that's supposed to be treated as such, included by the colleges. And so that's the part of the idea is that we want students to be able to continue their education. And what part of the impetus for this is that we'd heard from a number of colleges that there were students who just couldn't advance in their workforce programs. They couldn't advance in their careers because they had never quite completed their high school diploma.
Exciting.
It is indeed. Anyone else? All right, hearing none, may I have a motion to adopt new board rules, Chapter 12, Subchapter A, Sections 12.1 through 12.9 concerning the Opportunity High School Diploma Program? May I have a motion? Motion by Dr. Wong. May I have a second? Second by Mr. Frias. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Hey.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5H11 was approved on consent. Agenda item 5H12 is consideration and possible action to adopt new board rules, Chapter 22, Subchapter O, Sections 22.300 through 22.313 concerning Texas Leadership Research Scholars Program. Dr. Strothers will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Thank you, Chair Williams. The Texas Leadership Research Scholars Program is a research scholarship and leadership opportunity program for high-achieving doctoral students with financial need. As you recall, last board meeting, you all approved the rules to establish the Texas Leadership Scholars Program, which is a scholarship opportunity for high-achieving undergraduate students. The Research Scholars Program is similar, but will be specifically tailored towards high-achieving doctoral students with need. These rules provide a framework for the institutions to understand the amount and permissible uses of the scholarship awarded under the program. Specifically, the eligible institutions are public research and emerging research institutions. The scholarship amounts, the commissioner shall establish the amount of each research scholarship in an academic year that is 150% the average amount of the leadership scholarship. The scholarship may be applied toward housing, food, or other costs of attendance under the program. Allocation of funds. The commissioner shall determine and announce the number of initial scholarships available each year based on the following criteria. 50% of the available initial scholarships will be allocated among the public research universities based on the institution's share of the number of research doctoral degrees awarded by that institution the prior academic year. The other 50% of the scholarships will be allocated among the emerging research research universities based on each institution's share of the number of their research doctoral degrees awarded the previous year. We anticipate the first cohort to begin fall 2024. We did receive a few public comments during the 30-day period. We appreciate those comments received. And while the comments focus on eligibility questions and student support programming clarifications, no major changes to the rule were necessary. This concludes my comments, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments?
So members, just to call your attention, so this was an addition to the Leadership Scholars Program that added late in this session as especially in the Senate, as they were looking at data about the demographics of our faculty. Senator Blanco, also Senator Creighton, they called attention to this issue on the Senate floor, and Senator West added an amendment to the Leadership Scholars Program that gives the coordinating board the ability to distribute now funds for research to increase our production of research doctorates for students from low-income backgrounds. The way this was put together, so this is students who graduated from our Texas institutions or students from low-income backgrounds who graduated from Texas high schools. So even if they went off to Stanford or they went off to Harvard and we're trying to recruit them back for our doctoral programs, this would be a 4-year supplement to their fellowship. And so we think we'll be able to start out with about 75 a year that'll be allocated to our research and emerging research universities, about half to UT and A&M, the other half through our emerging research universities through the provost's office, so they can, like as you all I know are familiar, it can be very competitive to try to recruit top graduate students And it's very competitive in terms of the fellowship offers that are out there. So this is a $60,000 award that they can offer over 4 years as a supplement to their fellowship. We've recently had conversations with members that they're excited about this and interested in exploring the possibility of further expanding support for graduate students beyond just high achieving low income students. So hopefully this is just the start of a really exciting focus that, again, hope it's going to be important that we get the word out and our institutions will market to attract top graduate students into our doctoral programs.
Commissioner, how does that get divvied up between the different universities?
So it's divided based on their private and federal research. I think we had talked about this just the other day. Is it production of research doctorates, or is it it's production of research doctorates? Sorry, correction. About half of it is allocated for UT and A&M. Half of it's allocated for the emerging research universities, and we do look at how many research doctorates they produced in the previous year to figure out what share is allocated to each institution.
So the criteria is for Texas student and going to PhD program, right? There's two criteria.
Yeah, Texas student, even if they
move out, but they can come. Yeah.
Even if they went out of state as undergrads, to recruit them back to Texas.
A master will not be counting though. It will be a doctoral program. Or
it's focused on the research doctorate program. So some of the programs, they may have completed a master's degree but be admitted into the doctoral program. Some of the programs admit students to the doctoral programs and then award a master's in passant.
Correct.
So they're already doctoral. They're already doctoral students. They would qualify.
I think that will make a big impact, actually, as a matter of fact, for our Texas students. So it'll be great news.
Yeah, this is something we're very excited about being able to facilitate for our institutions.
Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adopt new board rules, chapter 22, subchapter 0, subchapter O, sections 22.300 through 22.313 concerning the Texas Leadership Research Scholars Program? May I have a motion?
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Clemmer. May I have a second?
I'll move. I'll second.
Second by Ms. Schwartz. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 6 is adjournment. There is no further discussion. If there's no further discussion, may I have a motion?
I'll move to adjourn.
May I have a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Thomas. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passes. Now we'll take a short break to allow staff to set up for the Agency Operations Committee meeting, and it'll begin shortly, and then we'll have lunch after that.